book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
We managed to get a very, very interesting show. I'm not sure it's going to be relevant to you, but you've got 2 hours with Dr. Jonathan Levy. He has been appointed the Chief Administrative Officer of the Organization of Emerging African States, OEAS. Right, Dr. Levy?
Yeah, hi, Barry. How are you?
Oh, gosh almighty. You know, putting together this, you're kind of watching it. You know that Israel is really going through turmoil, and the other side isn't being told, and I had Daisy on the show, but this show had a technical problem with her phone. She'll be on next week, folks, I hope. Meanwhile, I've got to repair my computer. I'm going to add something very quickly. David T. is coming to Florida in about a month, and he's going to provide me with a new computer, and hopefully all of this will be sorted out. And by the way, folks, no, I don't think it's all completely accidental, but what the heck. All right. Well, Dr. Jonathan, look, you've been on about stuff we'll talk about maybe at the end that I really relate to is the Vatican and how they have been absolutely robbing and murdering our people. But this is something I did my best. I really did. You got holes in your argument here. As well, OEA, once again, OEAS is the
Organization of Emerging African States. It's a
right
organization. I work for them, but as you know, I'm also an attorney involved in international law and a college professor. So it's one of the things I do. Organization of Emerging African States. We're sort of like a little UN of African countries that don't exist yet, like Biafra or Cabinda or Azawad, or Kabyle, which are all independence movements. But that's what we do. We don't believe in the current borders. Yes.
You agree with that? You're backing shadow governments.
Yeah, well, they're rebel governments. That I work with them, and the reason is Africa is such a mess that the old colonial borders, they got to go. And we've seen some of that. South Sudan, for example.
How many colonies are left?
Well, I don't know if I'd call them colonies. I mean, there's not really any colonies in Africa. I mean, there's a few European possessions left there. The Canary Islands, for example, and the Spaniards got some cities in Morocco, but that's not really what it's about. That's not what it's about.
There's no Belgian Congo.
Oh, no. Well, but there is the Belgian Congo. The border of the Congo, or Democratic Republic of the Congo, is the old Belgian Congo, and it worked well as a colony, but it works. These things work horribly as independent countries. There's nothing but turmoil and strife in Africa, and it got so bad that the UN set up a court system to deal with it.
We took a big jump there. you know what? Let's go back to Biafra. This is what you're working. I'm not sure it's going to work, okay? But you're claiming that Biafra is the only place in all of Africa that was not a colony. It's indigenous and it's fighting for itself. And if it gains what it wants, all of Africa is going to divide into the old way. This is a very tough argument. Do your best.
Oh, well, it's a good argument. The Europeans divided Africa up into administrative units, Libya, Somalia, the Congo, to suit themselves. Didn't ask the Africans. In fact, the map of Africa we see now really only was drawn back in 1885 at the Congress of Berlin. And the problem is, it worked fine for when you had colonies, but when these countries are independent, I mean, we've seen nothing but fighting all over Africa for years, and it just goes to show you it doesn't work. Libya is a mess. Somalia is a mess. The Congo's been a mess for 20 years. You name it, they're all. Nigeria is a mess, and all these things have to do with badly drawn boundaries. So the idea is get these people into the proper groupings that they want to be in, and not the old colonial boundaries. Simple idea that's opposed, of course, by the UN, the African Union, United States. Everybody opposes it because, heck, they make a lot of money off of countries in turmoil.
All right, let's go back to, let's focus on, I assume, your client, which would be Biafra. Now, you're saying it's a founding member of the Organization of Emerging African States. Again, if I were Nigeria, I wouldn't just give up territory that could be, useful to me. It's a mess what you're describing. You're saying, let's have a referendum and out we go. That's pretty tough if you're the government of Nigeria. All right, sort that one out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, England did it. They had a referendum for Scotland down, didn't they? It was good enough for the English, good enough for the Biafrans and the Nigerians.
Oh, the Scots are still English. And I know something about it. Long ago, I married a Scotswoman. And Scotland, they're part of the United Kingdom.
They are, but there's a secession movement, and they had an election. And that's what we're calling for in Africa as well. But, the real problem there, Barry, and this is the problem in Africa, is a lot of this is stirred up because of Islam, believe it or not. I mean, all the places where we've got problems, except maybe down in the Congo, is because of the recent fluctuation in Islam, where we've gone from strong men to radical Islam. And people want out of there. Even Muslims who aren't Arabs, non-Arab Muslims want out of this. So there's a huge turmoil going on there.
Okay, you know what? We'll jump to that. Let's start with Biafra, first of all. Now, look, this is a very tough argument, all right? And naturally, you're very articulate and you're making some sense out of it. But it's still a very tough argument.
No.
Why would Biafra, which I recall growing up in the 60s, was a mess. Starvation. It was just why would they want to go back to that?
Well, Islam, Barry, it's the Muslims. And I'll tell you why. Nigeria has 185 million people. 185 million. It is the biggest country in Africa, and it is 50% Muslim or more. The Christians live in the south and the southeast, which roughly corresponds to the Niger Delta and the former Republic of Biafra, which tried to secede before. Now, you also know there's a terrible Muslim, ISIS-led rebellion going on there called Boko Haram, that bloodthirsty, suicide bombers, you name it, and it's affiliated, it's a caliphate of ISIS, and no one's been able to stop it.
which was initially, in its very beginning, and something I covered. I'm no expert, but I have some knowledge. In northern Jordan, the American Special Forces, along with Israel, initially funded the original ISIS. So it gets very messy.
It is, and Boko Haram is part of ISIS, and the Christians are located in Biafra. They're Christians. They don't want to be part of a radical Muslim country that's undergoing a Muslim insurrection that the government doesn't seem to be able to control. Frankly, they don't want to be murdered. And there's 40, 50 million of them. They want no part of that. This is huge. And of course, it's not being covered in the mainstream media. And they want out of there. They know their best protection is not the Nigerian army, which has proved totally inept, is commanded by Muslims, and of course is sympathetic to ISIS and Boko Haram.
Who is commanding the Nigerian army, Sunni or Shia?
Well, now that's a really good question. It's Sunni, and in fact, they just slaughtered about 500 Shia up in the central part of the country a few weeks ago. Went in there and knocked the crap out of a Shia insurrection. So it's a Sunni Muslim group. Most Nigerians are Sunni Muslims, and Boko Haram, of course, is Sunni, and so it is a part of the Islamic ISIS war against Christians and non-Sunnis, and the Biafrans simply want out of that mess.
So, in other words, the Christians are allies of the Shiites.
No, the Shia were simply an aberration. There was an Iranian-supported Shia group in Nigeria. The President Buhari, who's a Sunni Muslim, went in there and sent the army in and did them in. The Christians, of course, that's a much larger group than the Shia. They see the writing on the wall. A lot of Christians have been killed by Boko Haram, and they know the Nigerian army is not going to protect them. They know that protection might be if they had their own country. Maybe they could keep the radical Islam out before it's too late.
They wouldn't allow them to stay in their own country.
Well,
very isolationist country. All right. You realize this is very messy, don't you?
It's terribly messy, but it all throughout Africa, we're seeing the spread of ISIS. In fact, we hear a lot about how ISIS, they're big in Syria, all the poor Syrian refugees and the Iraqi refugees in Afghanistan. But really, where ISIS has made the largest gains recently is in Africa. Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group that controls a goodly portion of Somalia, pledged allegiance to ISIS. Boko Haram, which controlled part of Nigeria and Cameroon, pledged allegiance to ISIS. And in fact, groups all throughout Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, including the Sinai, where they took out the Russian airliner, all pledged allegiance to ISIS.
Oh, wait a minute. That's a mighty big claim right there. Okay, you know what? Let's stick. I'm going to go back to this one. This one's a beaut. If they actually knock 220 plus Russians to their death, there should be a proof, first of all, and then they should face justice. That one's too big. We will return to that one. Let's stick with the Biafrans. In other words, you're the attorney for Christian Nigerians.
That's correct. For the Christians in Nigeria, they're called Biafrans, and they're mainly concentrated in there. In fact, they even one of their movements is called the Biafra Zionist movement. Probably the only other country in the world besides Israel that uses the word Zionist. In fact, they're very sympathetic.
They want to move to Zion.
Well, they identify with the Jews. They identify with the Jews because they're persecuted. They're surrounded by Muslims.
It's a new reality. what can I say? They're wrong, by the way. There's all kinds of reasons, but I won't dive into that. So the Biafran Zionist movement, it's really popular.
Yeah, absolutely. There were huge demonstrations just last month in December. It could break out in full rebellion at any time. Go Google it. Biafra, they've been in the news.
Zionism, which essentially meant returning to Mount Zion, to the Temple Mount. You understand there's a problem. There may be persecution, but they're not Zionists.
Well, the major tribe there in Biafra, the Igbo, actually identify with the Jews. It's quite interesting. Of course, there were groups in Nigeria that claimed they were lost tribes of Israel.
It's done. All right, and that, by the way, is not just Nigeria. In southern Africa, there's a pretty good claim of a group, I believe, in southwest Africa, who claim to have legitimate Jewish past, and DNA proves to tell them the truth. And are you bringing up stuff?
But it's true, yeah. And then, of course, it's the same story. They say it's just the same as you have African groups in South Africa and in Nigeria. Judaism was spread under maybe back in Roman times by groups of Jews in the diaspora settling in these regions and then integrating into the local population. Ethiopia, of course, has been a large source of migration to Israel in the last 20 years, as you know.
Ethiopian Jews also, there was a direct line, and there weren't many of them, 20,000 maybe, and they, oh gosh, almighty. If Israel knew about this, the media there would be really playing it up. Actually, I would advise you to get a few media people. I can help you on this, by the way, and rev this up. If there is a Zionist rebellion going on in Nigeria, well, you heard me.
Well, there is, and of course it's provoked by the spread of ISIS directly down into that part of Africa. ISIS, as you know, has been executing Christians in Libya and elsewhere in Africa. They're quite active, and you're right. There is the question of who is behind ISIS. Turkey, the CIA, Saudi Arabia, the usual suspects.
Hey, Turkey, CIA, and Saudi Arabia, that sounds like, in theory anyways, our people. Okay, you're talking about, we are stirring up are you saying for the Nigerians or against the Nigerians? For the Biafrans or against the Biafrans? What are you talking about?
Come on, Barry. Barack Hussein Obama, whose father was a African Muslim, where do you think his sympathies really lie? His sympathies lie with the Muslim Brothers and the spread of Islam in Africa. And it's not my people, but it's his people. And obviously the policy of promoting Muslim migration into Europe, Islamicization of Europe, allowing this radical Islam to spread in Africa with no intervention, nothing to stop it that we see, just the usual ineffective action. It raises some pretty serious questions.
My people are going to like you a lot, but it's kind of a mixture of messages, all right? Putting it mildly, you are not defending, you are the attorney for, you're actually going to bat for the Biafrans. They're the ones who hired you. And what are you planning for them?
Well, we're working with. I've been working with them for years, Barry, and the fact is they want out of that Muslim country. The president of Nigeria, people don't realize that, is a Muslim, Buhari. He replaced the Christian president, Good Luck Jonathan, who wasn't very effective, of course, in dealing with Boko Haram. The country is a disaster, but it's a very important country. 185 million people. The largest economy and country, military in Africa.
Now, I recall Biafra, excuse me, suffering unimaginable, starvation, massacres, the works, because they had wealth. Somewhere there was some wealth in Biafra. Why is Nigeria keeping them in the country?
Well, it's oil, the Niger Delta, which is just filthy with oil. And of course, we saw the same thing. They admit down in the Congo, for example, Patrice Lumumba was taken out in Katanga, which wanted to break out of that area too. And of course, because there was diamonds and uranium down there. So, the forces that be, the UN, the African Union, the United States, Mother England, who's the mother country for Nigeria, they're always on the side of the resource exploiters. Shell Oil, everyone else who wanted to get in there and get a piece of the oil. And of course, if you allow upstart countries like Biafra to get in there, well, that upsets, the economic order of things. You can't have that.
And so how come Africa is no longer white? And this was with the more than just the encouragement of Europe. How come there's no more white, let's face it, exporters to the white world have been removed from power? How come?
Well, because it's much more efficient to run it the way it is now. Of course, in fact, there's far more control than there ever was under colonial administrators. Now, the resource companies, the multinationals, control the situation, because Africa is, frankly, the industry is discouraged, and it's a resource-based economy, whether it's gold or strategic minerals, diamonds. The minerals that go into your computer, coltan is one of them. You don't hear too much about that, but that's from these conflict regions. Oil, of course, that's a big one coming out of Africa. So they have much more control than even the colonial administrators do, because they have their straw bosses there, multi-billionaire oligarchs, and, rulers who do whatever the resource companies want. It's really going back to the original type of company model. For example, King Leopold of Belgium, if you ever go to Brussels, you'll see his...
I recall him. He was on the stamps. I used to collect stamps. There he was.
Right, well, he had the idea, he set up a company. He made the whole Congo, which was like 40 times the size of Belgium, as personal property, as Congo Free State, run as a company. The British East India Company, the British East Africa Company, the Dutch East India Company. All those, that's the original model of mercantilism and colonialism. You have the companies do it. But later on, the countries got involved, but that's not how we do it anymore. We're not colonialists anymore. We do it through the corporations. And the corporations like weak, dysfunctional countries. That's how they make money. And I shudder to think what's going to happen in Europe. The more destabilized countries are, the more people make money, right?
Right now you've got almost riots in Germany. They took in 1 million, mostly Syrians, but from all over the Middle East, and their society is being overturned, and it looks awfully deliberate.
It sure does. And, you ask yourself, who's made money off of these destabilizations? Well, George Soros, of course, was, the master of destabilizing currencies. Now, I can't believe he's ultimately the mastermind behind all this sort of stuff, mass movements of people. Was ISIS set up to move people around? Who knows? But there's money to be made. Look at the Holocaust, Barry. There was a huge financial incentive there, right? That was one of the reasons for the Holocaust, to make money.
Oh, that's something we have in common as well. You know what? I should have expected a very good conversation with Dr. Jonathan Levy. We have to take 3 minutes off, and, well, Jonathan, we're far from settled. Believe me when I tell you that there's not a direct line so far. But we'll do our best and sort it out. This is Barry Chamish. We'll be back in 3.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Hey folks, it's Barry Chamish. But actually, I kind of like it. I like it. I gotta fix my computer. Look, all my books are at lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. You know what? Write in my last name in the search box under books. Chamish, Chamish. And my website, thank you, David Cameron, is barrychamish.com. You can also find out how to get my books at the website. Now, Dr. Jonathan Levy, tell people how to get a hold of you, especially if anyone out there cares about this Organization of Emerging African States. Go to it.
Well, sure. Organization of Emerging African States, www.oeas.info. www.oeas.info, or you can reach me personally at brimstoneandcompany.com, BRIMSTONE.
Once again, no one caught that. Once again, you can be reached at...
You can reach me through my law office, brimstoneandcompany.com. We have a form to fill out there. You want to contact me as an attorney interested in Africa, oeas.info. Both of those websites have plenty of ways to contact us.
Oh, that's brimstone as in fire. You have a lot of points here, and they're very contradicting, I want you to know. And I'm doing this under health duress as well. But I'm doing it because I want to. I want you to tell everyone. Now, this is you. I'm quoting you. Biafrans can expect no help from Europe or the U.S., which pander to Muslim interests. All right, that's number one, which is a major claim. And your big claim, and why we're talking, is no help from the International Criminal Court like I've ever heard of it, like anyone's ever heard of it. But you say it's been thoroughly corrupted by its prosecutor, Fatu Bensouda. Nice name. All right, there's you. Let's start with pandering to Muslim interests worldwide, which, by the way, I agree with you. Okay? Go to it.
Well, sure. It's really obvious. I mean, we see the current...
To you and me.
Yeah, well, it's obvious to everybody. I mean, you can see the European Union, the Obama administration. Whose rights are they concerned about? Are they concerned about Christians in the Middle East and Africa who are facing genocide? Or are they worried about those poor refugees with all those Syrian passports that ISIS has manufactured? And they could be from Iraq, they could be from Afghanistan. They're really worried about those refugees, Barry, that are just streaming into Europe, even though they could go to...
The question is, who's letting their borders be so wide open? And you've got the very far right in Germany, which scares me. Actually, almost revolting against their government. There's something going on that they don't like either. And with Germans, you got to watch out.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were warned about the Germans. Putin warned us about the Nazis breaking out in Ukraine a couple years ago. I work on that case, too. And, and of course, the U.S. was not concerned about the Nazi symbols that were trotted out by the various brigades in Ukraine. No, that's fine. So you have a reoccurrence of fascism in Ukraine. And now... Absolutely. What happens when you bring lots of undocumented Muslims into Germany? You're going to bring in fascism there too. So it's almost as if it's deliberate. And the Russians are very concerned. Yeah.
All right. Again, we're going to try and put order. You've got yourself, I believe, a straightforward. You're really, really ticked off at the International Criminal Court and its prosecutor, Fatu Bensouda. Let's focus on that, and then we'll do all the side issues.
Right. In fact, I'm a member of the bar of that court as an attorney. I'm a member of the International Criminal Court Bar. And I've been a member of that since the court started up in 2002. That's been around since 2002. It's an independent court. About 160 countries are members of it, not the UN. The U.S. is not a member. Clinton tried to bring the U.S. in, and Congress wouldn't go for it. Russia is not a member. China is not a member. But all the Europeans are.
Russia, United States, and China are not members. Who's going to listen to any verdicts declared by the ICC?
Well, it has jurisdiction over those 160 countries that signed on, mainly most of Europe, and all the countries the Europeans could browbeat into doing it. And of course, that was most of Africa. So, but the bigger countries, Israel's not a member, Pakistan's not a member, India's not a member. The Palestinians are a member, so just recently admitted as a country member, even though they're not a sovereign country, as a sovereign member of the ICC, International Criminal Court. So they're influential, and the idea behind the International Criminal Court was we'd have a court to prosecute genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. That was the idea.
Well, you're really, really mad because you want to use them. Well, first of all, what do you want them to, who do you want them to try?
Oh,
all right?
Right. Well, since the court was set up and billions of dollars spent since 2002, what have they done, Barry? They've convicted 3 minor African warlords of some crimes. That's it. That's all they've done since 2002. Not much of a record for all that money. But what I want them to do, I want them to investigate and prosecute ISIS, Boko Haram, and Al-Shabaab that operate in countries that are members of that court. That's what I want them to do. That's what they're set up to do. ISIS is going around lopping people's heads off, burning people alive like it's, 1648 or 1437. Well, it is 1437 in the Muslim calendar. But they're committing unspeakable war crimes that and are perhaps even rivaling the Nazis in shocking crimes. And what's this court doing? This International Criminal Court? Where are these guys?
Let's say they pursue them. All right, they agreed to investigate and try what you're saying is radical Islam, is what you're saying. Let's say they do that. Who's going to listen to them?
Well, the ICC has the whole UN behind it. It actually was set up as a very powerful organization. It can do things. In fact, the prosecutor of the ICC was supposed to be a very important, powerful position. The Bush administration was so scared of the International Criminal Court that it signed like 70 bilateral agreements with all countries the U.S. military operates, and they're guaranteeing them immunity from that court. That's how scared Bush was of it. So it is supposed to be.
That's also significant. Who are we talking about?
Well, what do you mean who we're talking
about? Who got a free pass from the ICC from Bush?
Well, no. Bush, you got it wrong here. Bush was so scared that U.S. military would be indicted by the ICC.
All right.
That he went on a treaty bender, if you will, and signed about 70, 80 treaties with every country the U.S. operates militarily in, exempting U.S. personnel from ever being turned over to the International Criminal Court. That's how scared Bush was of that court.
All right, we sorted that one as well. All right, let's go back to this. You are really ticked because the prosecutor is not pursuing radical Islam, right?
Well, yes, the prosecutor is a lady by the name of Fatou Bensouda, and she's from the Islamic Republic of Gambia in Africa. So she's an African, a lady, and a member of the Islam religion. And she's supposed to go there and prosecute, she's supposed to prosecute war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, which I think we all agree. I mean, most people would agree that that's what ISIS does. Among other things. also destroying cultural property, destroying the heritage of mankind, looting Roman ruins, murdering the head of archaeology in Syria because he wouldn't show them where they thought he had gold hidden. I mean, doing all sorts of medieval type crimes. Now, you would think you'd want to get to the bottom of ISIS. I mean, what could be wrong with that, right?
Right.
Well,
What's wrong?
Fatou Bensouda said back in April, well, they're very concerned about this ISIS, but it's too narrow, Barry. It's too narrow an issue for this court to get involved in. I mean, ISIS only operates in 50 countries, right? They inspire terrorism in the United States, Paris. They're lopping off heads in 9 different countries, but according to Ms. Bensouda, it's just a narrow issue. They can't get involved in that because they got better things to do. Better things to do. You want to know what better things to do she's doing?
Her country is an Islamic state. You view that as very significant. I add Sunni, right?
A Sunni. Now, it's interesting you should mention that because the one case that this Bensouda has actually initiated on her own since becoming prosecutor 2 years ago, you know what really got her ticked off? The Gambians are a Sufi. They're Sufis. They're Sufi. Maybe you know Islam better than me. Sufism is a sect of the Sunnis, and she got, she found a hideous war crime that had been committed, indeed, and she did go after it. Someone in Timbuktu, I'm not making this up, destroyed the mausoleums of some Sufi saints. That's a war crime, and by golly, she's going to prosecute them.
All right, I can see that happening in Timbuktu. Now, the real world, which is, objectively we can say at a major upheaval, if not civil war, I can think of a few continents right now. Who cares about Timbuktu?
Well, nobody. That's why it's great. Timbuktu, the old expression. Who cares what happens in Timbuktu, right? It's the end of the world. She's prosecuting a case in Timbuktu because someone knocked over some mausoleums belonging to Sufi saints. But ISIS, Boko Haram, and Al-Shabaab, which have killed tens of thousands of innocent people, lopped off heads, destroyed archaeological sites, are responsible for terrorism and millions of so-called refugees flooding into Europe, destroying the European economy. And you haven't seen what's happening to their tourism industry, but I'll tell you, billions of dollars lost there. That's of no concern to the International Criminal Court. And have we heard anyone criticize this Fatou Bensouda? I think I'm the only one.
I don't think they're not in everybody's vocabulary.
True, but again, the idea was to set up an international criminal court so there would never be another Holocaust. Do you believe that? It was set up for that reason.
Really?
It was. It was the culmination of international. It was supposed to be this shining diamond, the apex, the acme of international law was going to be the International Criminal Court. So if you ever had another budding Adolf Hitler, man, that court would be all over him and indicting him, putting out arrest warrants through Interpol and dragging his ass before a court before he ever actually got set up. But what's his name? Baghdadi, the head of ISIS. They're not interested in him. No, sir.
How long ago was it set up to prevent another Holocaust?
Well, the court has been operating since 2002. And as I said, it hasn't been very effective. Now, they did prosecute 3 minor African warlords and get convictions. The previous prosecutor tried to go after the president and vice president of Kenya for some odd reason. I don't know why. Election violence. Even though Kenya, of course, is a frontline state in the fight against ISIS. But they're still going after the Kenyan vice president for war crimes. even though it looks like the Kenyans are the victims of the war crimes. So,
and let's say he tries. Will he fly to the courthouse?
Well, the court is in The Hague, in Holland, in the Netherlands.
Fly Hague voluntarily?
Well, the Kenyan vice president is voluntarily participating, I guess, because the Europeans have threatened to cut Kenya off if he doesn't. You see, the French, the Germans, the English, they really are into rule of law, Barry, and you just can't, and they disrespect the International Criminal Court from their point of view. So the Kenyan vice president.
Where would he go to prison?
Well, they've got a prison in The Hague, the same one they used for the Serbs from the UN tribunal. So they do have a UN prison in The Hague. But interestingly, after a person's convicted, if they don't like you, they can send you anywhere they want to. So, for example, one of the Africans got sent to Finland.
They chose Finland
to put him in prison there. It's nice and damp and cold, I guess, where you'd send an African. And, so they can send you under the auspices of the International Criminal Court, which is associated with the UN, to any prison in a member state. Remember, there's 160 members. So they can send you to Timbuktu, I suppose, to serve out your time.
I just have some problem imagining the Sharia saying, what the heck? Let's go to The Hague and get tried.
Right. Well, but this is the point is, now let's go back to World War II. One thing the UN did when it was set up in 1944, it was the Allies, the United Nations against the Nazis. They said very strongly, they warned the Nazis. They said, you know what, you're committing heinous war crimes against the Jews and others, and you're going to, when we win, Hitler and Himmler and Goering, you're going to go on trial for war crimes. And the Nazis were a little bit worried about that because they were losing. I mean, as you know your history of the Holocaust. Himmler, for example, did ransom out hundreds of thousands of Jews from Hungary, trying to, with an eye toward mitigating his liability later. So people do worry about that. If they think they're going to lose at some point and not be martyred or executed or whatever, that has an effect. And of course, in the case of ISIS, yes, there should be an investigation, because you and I both suspect that ISIS just didn't appear out of the sands of Mesopotamia.
No, they didn't. All right, we'll do that in the next hour. We'll dive into that a bit. You're absolutely right. Did I stump you?
I thought we were done. Oh, no, we're still going. Okay, no.
No, you're absolutely right, and we'll dive into that in the next hour.
So
that's the problem. Where did they get their arms from? How come Turkey trained them? How come Syria's borders were open to them? You want to ask basic questions? I got plenty of basic questions.
Someone ought to investigate that. The International Criminal Court is the international organization that is supposed to investigate war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. And of course, they're not doing it. Nobody's doing their job. So these things are not getting investigated. It's one thing for you and I to make that allegation, but for a court that has 160 countries as members, that's another matter. And they can issue, subpoenas. They can do all sorts of things. They can go to the Security Council, but they're not doing it. They don't want to do it.
How do you unappoint the prosecutor? That's your objective. How do you do it?
Well, under their rules, the prosecutor can be removed by a majority of the member states of the ICC. So these blockhead countries that are...
Would she survive it, or would she keep up? What would happen if that vote took place?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if the truth of this thing came out, I would think, first of all, that the constituents in those countries, a lot of those countries are under threat from ISIS. Nigeria, for example, well, many of them, France, England. I mean, if it got out that this woman was protecting ISIS, which she is, and not doing her job, if someone would actually bring those charges, I think there'd be an outcry.
Okay, I'm going to leave that dangling. My real problem is the issue you took on, which is leading to this, is Biafra. I mean, that you are the client of Biafrans. Agreed?
Well, I am, yes. Yes, and we need to. I am, and the fact is, again, why can't Christians have their own country? Why are the Muslims can have their own country, but Christians who live under Muslim rule are denied their own country? And we know that living under Muslim rule doesn't work out well for anybody who's not a Muslim.
Is that the sub-issue?
Well, it's a fact, because as we know, the declining Christian population in the Middle East, down from a high of 15 to 20%, used to be, Christians and Jews. It's down to about 5% Christian now, and dropping every day as they try to get out of there. So, again, why are Christians being denied their own countries in Africa as radical Islam spreads and threatens everybody's life? And Biafra is part of that.
Well,
there are also, by the way, other countries that I work with that you've probably never heard of: Kabyle, the Rif, Azawad. Those are what are called Amazigh, Berbers, who are secular Muslims who can't stand the Arab version of Islam. They call it fascist Islamicists.
Oh, they have a restaurant chain called Burger King. That's them?
Yeah, the Berbers, they're actually called the Amazigh now, and they are secular Muslims. They don't want any part of what they call Arab-tainted Islam, and they'd like their majorities in large parts of northern Africa. They want out from under these Arab rulers. In fact, there's a large group in Algeria called the Kabylians, and in fact, their leader, President Farhat Maheni, went to Israel and is a friend of Israel and asked the Israelis for help. Can you imagine that? Muslims asking the Israelis for help. That's what they wanted.
And if I recall my history, and you're challenging me a bit, there are nomads in Morocco that are known as Berbers.
Yes, the RIF, R-I-F, or yeah, correct. In Morocco, in Libya, in Algeria, and in Mali. In fact, they had an uprising there where the northern part of the country declared independence, and the Berbers, the Tuareg, if you will, who are Berbers, asked for help. And they were denied help, and then Al-Qaeda and ISIS moved in there.
And we both suspect that there is a core of where they got their funding from initially, and I think we're going to talk about that in the next hour. You'll have to help me. Believe it or not, my teeth scraped against my tongue. This has been going on for ages. That and my computer dying, putting together a show is incredible for me, but I'm enjoying it. We see life largely the same way. And I can't say that about a lot of people, all right? Look, what we're going to be talking about, let's say, your strategy for the Biafrans, I think, is very weak. Okay, that's my... now you know how we're going to start, all right?
All right.
I wouldn't buy into your strategy. And, folks, this is not said from any disrespect for Jonathan Levy. This is two minds meeting. I don't buy into it. You want to bring down the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in order to get a referendum. That's what it do.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Hey, folks. All right, Dr. John Levy. That you can expect no help from the U.S. or the EU or the UN. No one is going to help Biafra. But then your plan calls for the UN and the EU to try the Nigerians. Look, come on, you got to sort this out for me. I mean, don't you see the contradiction here?
Well, in order to get that Christian country, Biafra, out of Nigeria, there's got to be a referendum, an internationally recognized referendum. But the Biafrans can't secede. They don't have any guns. They don't have any tanks.
So you want DC to get the EU and the UN to try the Nigerian government and support a shadow government in Biafra. Well, if they win, right?
Well, we got to have international recognition of some sort. I mean, you can't hold a referendum unless the Nigerians are cooperating. Now, you would say, well, you're crazy. Why would they give that up? Well, the situation is such, if the Nigerians thought the country was going to go into civil war, they might give up on it. They might hold the referendum, and then you'd get your Biafra out of there. I mean, we are talking the largest country in Africa, 185 million people. Not too long ago, the U.S. used to be 185 million. In fact, there's more people in Nigeria than there are in Russia.
The point being what?
And well, if you think the refugee crisis is bad now, right? You think it's bad now, start a civil war in Nigeria and see what happens.
So in other words, the very organizations who you claim pander to Muslim interests, you want them to adjudicate something against Muslim interests. It's a mishmash. Come on.
Look,
help me out here.
Somebody's got to go in there and do it. And I agree, it's difficult, but you can't have unless somebody's overseeing the referendum, you can't have it. I mean, even in the case of the Crimea, they had the referendum there. I mean, the Russians were overseeing it. They brought in some international observers. You know something about Ukraine and Russia. You know the vote was overwhelmingly in favor of getting out of Ukraine for various reasons. But, they need something similar to get international recognition. And that's the way to do it. Now, the fact is, does the U.S. or the EU or the UN want to see a Biafra? No, they sure don't. But if the alternative was a civil war in a country of 185 million people, with a history of genocide, because there was a genocide 1967 to 1970 in Biafra that people are vaguely aware of still.
I think a few of us are still alive and recall it.
Right. Some people recall it. And a million people died the first time Biafra tried to secede. If it happened again, it'd be more like 6 or 10 million, because Nigeria has been growing so quickly since then. So, and you'd have so many refugees flowing out of there. I mean, it's in everybody's interest to get this thing settled. And to think that 50 million Christians are going to live under Muslim rule these days, that's just crazy. We know what happens to Christians under Muslim rules. And on top of it, that ISIS and Boko Haram are operating in that country. I mean, you can't blame the Biafrans. They know that the Muslims are coming for them. And they need to get out of there.
All right. I'm going again through your case. Remember something. I think you forgot. You support these shadow governments. If you want the standing government to knock you down, they'll just say the OEAS supports a bunch of rebels.
They do, absolutely. And these rebels, without exception, are anti-radical Islam. And they want their countries to be independent and get out from under corrupt governments. I mean, for example, one of the groups we support, the Front for the Liberation of the State of Cabinda, which is an oil-rich part of Angola, wants out of there. Yeah, they want out. And because the president of Angola is a billionaire.
All right, you're going too fast. What state? It's a separate issue. What state did you mention?
Well, Cabinda, C-A-B-I-N-D. It is in Angola. It's what they call a little enclave in the Congo. That's part of Angola, where all the over half of the oil production comes from.
And if anyone knew that.
Yeah.
All right, folks, this is not simple. Not even close, by the way. But I'm doing my best to make this. I think my listeners are catching on. All right, but in short, your strategy, I don't think has a chance of working.
Well, as you know me from my work against the Vatican, and
Well, I can that as well.
Yeah,
but
you know that I like to take on some big cases that have a very high difficulty, and that I'm a very optimistic person. I like to think that truth and justice will prevail.
All right, say you win, and somehow there's a vote taken, and out goes the prosecutor, and a new prosecutor comes in. What's going to change?
Well, if you got a real prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, and they did a real investigation, you would find out who's behind ISIS and Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab and all the rest of them. And I think we'd be shocked, or would we? I think...
Actually, that's not a bad idea. Is it a realistic idea? Look, this world sucks. I guess you know that, right?
It does, but like I said, there comes a time, Barry, when you have to be for truth or justice, or you always feel unclean. And you and I, we know what the score is, and you have to speak out about it, or else you're part of the problem. You can't go along with these things. And
look at your arguments, a few of them, okay, just a few, and go ahead and answer them. I want you to be at your very best coming up. You're saying that, look at all the great places in Africa until the Islam butt in. Somalia was a unified nation. It was a pirate nation. It wasn't such a hot place. You're saying it got divided up. I say it wasn't so good to begin with.
Well, Somalia, the scenario in Somalia is the one that's been repeated elsewhere. Somalia actually is the model for what happened in Iraq and Syria, what's happening in Syria and in Egypt, where they had a strong man in Somalia up until 1990 called C.D. Barr. Yeah, Barr.
Strong man of pirates.
Well, he may have been, but he kept that place together. Now, someone took him out, and they've had nothing but, extremism there since then. And it's the same thing. Saddam Hussein was not a very nice guy, but I think as Donald Trump said, you know what? Compared to what we got now, he's like, 3 leagues above that.
It's a flimsy argument. Jonathan, I'm saying this sincerely to you. There are holes in... Look, a good arguer could poke every single hole out from here. Somalia was under a strong man who was a pirate. You could argue for that. I remember my ships from Israel taking a long way around Somalia because it was so damn dangerous.
It may have been dangerous, but it's nothing like it is now, where it's been an incubator first for Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and ISIS. It's a recruiting ground now for terrorism. Before that, you just simply had a dictator down there.
Listeners, you decide. He's using it. It was lousy before, but look what we got now argument. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Well, that's how you have to look at it. Who in the heck would ever think we'd be saying Bashar Assad is better than what's coming after him? But it's the fact, Barry. Who would ever think that an Assad, and then you're familiar with Bashar's dad, his old man, right? They're better than what's trying to replace them?
Let's do our very best. Us two smart guys are going to sort of... What you've written, I've thought about. you're saying that, oh gosh, there's such a problem with it. Libya under Gaddafi was a power to be reckoned with, but not now. Look, who attacked Gaddafi? Whose jets attacked the Libyan jets under Gaddafi? Who searched them down in the desert?
Who did that? NATO. That's
Yeah.
who did it. Yeah.
Yep. Now, what does that tell you?
Well, it tells us a lot of things. Who might be behind these sort of things that are going on, and who takes out governments but then doesn't replace them with any sort of government that has a chance to survive. So there's some real questions about what kind of crazy foreign policy is going on here. And the aftermath is turning out terrible for everybody. I don't know. It ought to be investigated. And again, ISIS is operating in Libya.
Even deeper. You got a farce of an election in America where the lady running for the Democrats, and she will be, it's been on course from the beginning, was sitting in the White House press room watching Benghazi be attacked, and the ambassador get murdered, didn't butt in. There's a whole story, and this election is going to be buried. All right. You want to talk about a good person to sue? Start with her.
Well, yeah, sure. And who did, what happened to that poor Christian fellow, the Coptic Christian who they tried to blame for it? They said, oh, his movie about Mohammed must have caused this. It had nothing to do with it. And they blamed the Christians. I think they locked the guy up on a probation violation, believe it or not. Got him out of circulation.
I don't know who you mean. Who are you talking about?
Well, the original excuse offered for the attack on the Benghazi embassy was that the natives were upset because a Coptic Christian, Copts, of course, are the native Christians of Egypt, a Coptic Christian in Los Angeles had made a movie about the life of Mohammed, where he shows that Mohammed's not a very nice fellow, shall we say. And my God, that incensed the Muslims so much that it must have attacked the embassy.
What has this got to do? Somebody in Los Angeles, probably entirely unknown in Libya. Are you saying this was the excuse for the attack on your and the murder?
Harry, that is what the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said at the time. That's what Obama said. Well, it must have been that intolerant movie that was made caused them to do this.
Right, you're right. I recall it now. You're right.
Blame the Christians. Blame the Christians. The Christians made those Muslims do it.
You know, they were watching the attack. Hillary Clinton was in the room watching the attack by satellite. You know that, right?
I do, and they let it happen, and then they put out a false story, which I guess is kind of, is that lying? I guess it's lying. Lied to everyone because they knew that some obscure Egyptian Christian in Los Angeles didn't cause this. Had the guy locked up. They found some that he was on probation for some financial crime and locked him up, got him out of circulation. I don't know what happened to the guy. I guess he was told never to show his head again, and used that as the excuse. And of course, that sort of fell apart after a few days because it was ludicrous.
She's going to be president. It's not going to fall apart in time.
Yeah, well, but she may or may not be president. We'll see what happens.
Oh, it doesn't matter, by the way. That's my point of view. This is an utter sham. It's not free choice.
Well, and again, it's an attack on the Christians. Not to mention the Jews, because they're using the International Criminal Court to go after Israel. Now mind you, that they're not concerned about ISIS, but they're very concerned about the Israelis, who aren't even a member of the International Criminal Court.
All right. Let's do this one. You have got them accepting Palestine as a member of the ICC, And at the same time, what you've got is Palestine, which is admitted to the ICC, and Hamas won't be investigated, but Israel will be for war crimes. All right, go ahead, do that one.
Well,
do that.
Yes, they are. They're investigating Israel for war crimes. Of course, they want to reopen that Turkish flotilla business, Gaza. That's a major war crime, Barry. I mean, that is like, much more serious than anything ISIS. Right.
Okay.
Right, that's serious, and they want to look into those nasty settlers in the West Bank, and things like that. Never mind that Hamas is throwing people off the tops of buildings and dragging people through the street behind cars, or lynching people. No, that's not a war crime. And so they've welcomed Palestine with open arms into the International Criminal Court as a member. Now, Israel's not a member of that court, but they're still going to investigate Israel. Whereas, on the other hand, they just throw up their hands and say, well, but ISIS, it's too narrow an issue. We can't investigate ISIS. Let's investigate Israel. And is anyone speaking out about that? No.
My little show was, you're a great guest, don't get me wrong, but my original guest was from Hebron. Her name was Dr. Stern. They've lost 2 stabbing deaths in the last month, a couple. They live in constant fear. I want to bring that on as well. She really doesn't get many invitations beyond me, and I'm trying to provide that point of view. It's a real tough one. I want you to know, real tough.
Yeah, and again, the Muslim prosecutor of the International Criminal Court is very concerned about the issue of Palestine, but not concerned at all about ISIS. So this kind of craziness, which is being supported by the Europeans. I mean, who do you think's paying the budget? It's not being paid by Mauritania, right? It's being paid by France and Germany and England and Norway and Sweden, Denmark, the usual suspects, right?
And we're going to remind people, NATO bombed Gaddafi. America and Israel trained what became ISIS in the year 2011. It was exposed. Those who exposed were shut down. It's a much, much messier situation. Look, I support everything you do. I think you're a great guy. But if you dive deep, everyone's involved. And when you dive even deeper, we have so little control there, I said.
Well, we do, but people are being slaughtered. And genocide and war crimes are being committed. And
no,
it really can't be, there can't be impunity for that sort of thing. You can't have that, because if we allow ISIS to do these sort of executions and 14th century type burnings and stonings or whatever they do, that sort of attitude will lead to larger things. It'll lead to another Holocaust. It'll lead to a Holocaust of Christians who will probably be the victims.
We're in the middle of something very, very close to that. All right. All right. We're getting our wish. You're getting a brand new Holocaust. Fine. And you think you can stop it by getting a new prosecutor at the ICC.
Well, it's things like that. Some little thing can sometimes stop it. If there was a real investigation of these things going on, that might be enough, because things are unsettled. Things are unsettled, and people may panic. It's not as if the forces behind this are all seeing and all knowing.
No, it's not as if that at all. But you know what? Folks, this is a very optimistic counselor, attorney. You're right. And look, between us, you put your foot into Nigeria, you got trouble. And from little to big, it's not a good place. Well, he is representing Biafra, and that's that. He's the chief administrative officer of the Organization of Emerging African States, OEAS. That's Jonathan Levy. Tell people how to get a hold of you.
Right. www.oeas.info, info. That's one way to do it, and very simple. Just hit our email, info@oeas.info. You can get a hold of me that way. Search me out on Google, Dr. Jonathan Levy, Levy.
All right, folks. As you know, we're archived for a week. And take note of this, Jonathan. We're at www.libertyarchives.com. If you missed all that, you can catch it again. And I'm going to give my last plug, and then we're going to dive into this. I'm getting depressed. All right. And I shouldn't. I should be uplifted. But I have problems with all kinds of things. Look, all my books are at lulu.com, www.lulu.com. Type in my last name, Chamish. My website is www.barrychamish.com. Thank you, David Samarin, for keeping it up. Look, Jonathan, when we come back, oh, my goodness. Okay, we'll start with the Soviet plane, and there's background to that. You may have glossed over a little bit, but you're claiming that ISIS, well, you call them, at this point, Daesh.
Right.
Which are, yes. Well, that's who is ISIS, is Daesh. Knocked down over 220 Russian tourists. Look, I kind of accept that. I did from the beginning. Number one, why don't the Russians, well, maybe they are getting even in Syria and bombing ISIS. Tell us what happened since the Russians believe that they bombed their tourist plane. Start now, then we'll go into the next half hour.
Right, well, it's very significant. Very significant. You know, the Islamic State felt it could take out the Russian jet with tourists on it. They did it. They challenged Putin, and Putin's been going after them. Now, in our media, it's all Putin's bombing innocent civilians, and he's doing this and that. And you know, the problem is this: the United States is the one who is providing it's to ISIS.
John, we have to continue this, and we will end with the Vatican. Something you and I have been banging our heads against the wall for the longest time. Their responsibility for protecting the Nazis and thank you, Jerome Corsi, include Hitler. He got away as well. We'll be back in a minute.
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings, and to his kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation, under our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Well, basically, it's too complicated, but nonetheless, before Syria knocked down a Russian military jet, it gets so messy. The fact is, and I reported this immediately, Netanyahu met with Putin. The next day the bombing began. You can be darn sure that Netanyahu said, please don't bomb Syria. You know there was collaboration there. What do you make of it?
Well, the thing to look at here is, Putin is bombing. He's doing some things there. And if you're bombing the so-called Free Syrian Army, you're bombing Al-Qaeda, you're bombing ISIS, they're all the same thing. And where do they get their weapons from, right? Where do these guys get all their weapons? You need a lot of armaments, right? Where do you get them? You get them from the United States.
From America.
Yeah, and it's a standing joke. The Free Syrian Army. You even see it in mainstream media now. They say all 6 of them. There's not enough Free Syrian Army to man a roadblock, they say, but yet they received what the Pentagon is admitting to. This is just what they're admitting to, is $500 million. And armaments were sent to the Free Syrian Army. Well, if there's only 6 of them, Barry, where'd all those armaments go to?
Gosh, Jonathan. You know what? I'm not sure why I started this, but it doesn't make me happy. All right.
No, right. It went to ISIS. That's where it went. And it went to Al-Qaeda, went to ISIS. They're all the same. Now, the other thing that people forget is, and you know the answer to this one, what was the original name of ISIS?
What was it?
Well, it was called Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Iraq?
Yes, it was the Iraqi section of Al Qaeda changed its name to ISIS and moved into Syria. That's all. It's called ISIS Iraq.
You've got that a little wrong.
No, I don't think so. No, that's where they came from. They came from Iraq.
If that's the case, I thought it was the other way around. In other words, trained in northern Jordan.
Well, some of them were indeed. Once this is the point, they took the organization of Al Qaeda in Iraq, and certainly there was training provided in Jordan and Syria, and revamped it, made it better, and rearmed them, and gave them the second largest city in Iraq, Mosul. But the original genesis of that group was Al Qaeda in Iraq. There's really no difference between Al Qaeda and ISIS. I mean, we hear something in the media. Oh, they're rivals, and we need to help out. We need to help out Al Qaeda in Syria because they really don't like ISIS. You know, it's nonsense. It's just nonsense. And there's money from the U.S. being funneled by the millions into ISIS. Don't ask me why. You have to ask the commander-in-chief.
Who is?
That's Barack Hussein Obama.
Oh, of course. How could I have missed? All righty. Look.
So an investigation by the International Criminal Court would get to the bottom of it fairly quickly, wouldn't it?
What are Articles 46 and 47 of a Rome statute I have never heard of that you say could bring down the present prosecutor?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Very simply, the Rome Statute is the law. The Treaty of Rome, that's kind of significant, isn't it? The Treaty of Rome was the treaty that set up the International Criminal Court. So it's called the Rome Statute, but it's really the Treaty of Rome. And it has some articles. Article 46 and 47 has to do with removing and disciplining a prosecutor, the chief prosecutor, for breach of duty. Now, see, this chief prosecutor, Barry, they're not elected. They're appointed for 10-year terms by the members of the International Criminal Court, which are countries.
But it's some sort of dictatorship. She determines everything.
Well, it looks that way. You know, Ambassador Bolton, I don't know if you remember him, Bolton, who was the UN ambassador under Reagan to the UN, who hated the UN. He just hated the UN. And Bolton warned about this. I think it was Richard Bolton, if I'm not mistaken. He warned that the International Criminal Court was inherently dangerous because it gave dictatorial powers to the court to go in there and issue arrest warrants against heads of states. And theoretically get the backing of the member states of the Rome Treaty to make good on this. So it's a very dangerous position to put a radical Muslim as the chief prosecutor. And that's Fatou Bensouda, a radical Muslim sympathizer.
All right, folks. This is that portion of the show. I have not left happier. I want you to know that. I don't think your position is strong enough. I think those against you are much stronger.
Oh, of course. I'm probably besides the Kenyans, I'm the only one speaking out in the Africans who have been suffering under this International Criminal Court that up till they took an interest in Israel recently, just in the last few months, has been mainly kicking Africans around down in the sub-Sahara. And that's the only people they've ever prosecuted in 13 years, is Africans. You have an International Criminal Court that only prosecutes Africans.
In The Hague, no less.
Yes.
They flew over.
Right. Yeah, they don't try to go after North Korea, for example.
For what?
Well, the North Koreans commit war crimes and genocide, crimes against humanity. Well, allegedly. They don't investigate the North Koreans. Don't investigate the Saudis who just lopped off 47 heads. Was it last week? Don't investigate.
That's a little provocative. Do warnings like that work?
Well, as I said, they seem interested in that Gaza issue where 6 Turkish ruffians, people who were challenged by Israeli defense forces and didn't want to stand down, got killed. That's a war crime, Barry.
There's no disagreement. Right.
But yet Boko Haram has killed tens of thousands of people in Nigeria. And there's no crimes there. No, sir, just move on.
I have to get this last issue. This one, I think is still dangling.
We want to talk about the Vatican. Is what we should talk about.
Yes, as the attorney for the Holocaust victims. Now, this is serious. You know what? We'll talk to my producer. I had Jerome Corsi on a month ago.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. As a man, I have these few great guys in the world. He wrote a book about Hitler living, that he was snuck out. He explains it very well. And then I'm watching TV, and the History Channel is doing Hunting Hitler, same title as his book. Again, you didn't win. You didn't get a penny from the Vatican, and they snuck out everyone all the way to Hitler. And here I am in my itty-bitty little room, banging my head against the wall. There's no justice.
Well, I've got a canon law petition still pending with the Vatican, Barry. I mean, my position is the Vatican is the one who's got to, no one else is going to make the Vatican do anything. So it's got to come from the Vatican itself. And
well, they have an immunity. They have a way out.
They do. And of course they control their own judicial system. So canon law is the Vatican's law. But what can you do? I'm persisting in it. The Vatican laundered the proceeds of concentration camps in Yugoslavia and throughout Europe. We have other evidence that after the Second War, they sent all the loot down to the Vatican Bank to be used after the war for various things. So Vatican's not talking about that.
I say the rabbis got the majority of the money stolen from my people, and they got their Nazis out, and my people are still dead.
Well, they did, but they had the help of, it wasn't just the Vatican. The CIA was, Angleton and Dulles were big on there, as was MI6, in helping to move Nazis out to safety. That's
what Corsi told me as well.
Corsi's right. It's a historical fact. I mean, Mike, we still have a witness to that thing. He's still alive. I just met with the man just a few months ago, Bill Gowan, who was a special investigator who investigated the rat lines for the U.S. Army back in 1947. He's still alive. And he said it was Angleton and the British were the ones popping all the Nazis out. And Jim Angleton, Jim Jesus Angleton, who was head of the CIA counterintelligence under Dulles.
All right, let's do the hard stuff. I'm so tired of hard journalism. Let's go through it. First of all, William Gowan is still alive. That's great. We have a pope who volunteered for the Wehrmacht and became pope. All right, go through that.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, Benedict's still around, too. I don't know what he's doing, but he's still around. And we have another pope, Francis, who comes from Argentina, where all the Nazis ended up. So I'm sure he's not sympathetic to them at all, right? Anyway, so, the Vatican was the key player in getting Nazis out of Europe after the Second War. They had the networks, and they had the funding. The funds were run through the Vatican Bank. And you're right, Barry, it wasn't cheap. They had to move a lot of people. They had to move them fast. They had to give them new identities. They had to get them into safe places in South America or the Middle East or Spain.
With the Nazis. Oh, my goodness. Forget all that stuff. They saved the movement.
They did. And also the fascist movement was saved. The money was, we see it cropping up now and then. So the whole thing, it was done through the Vatican. The Vatican has never apologized for it. They've never accounted for it. To this day, even as they claim they're cleaning things up.
You think Israel made them account for their crimes? Israel tried and convicted one Nazi, and even he was behind a soundproof booth. Israel didn't.
Right, and it is a sham. The U.S., remember, the U.S. Office of Special Investigations that was supposed to be going after these Nazis, right? Did they ever convict a single Nazi of war crimes? They did not. Not a single one. They deported a couple minor officials.
Well, Israel, in theory, had the most to seek justice for. A lot of loot. Forget the bodies. A lot of loot could have, it was, a tiny bit was given back by the Vatican as reparations.
Oh, no, the Vatican never gave back a penny. The Vatican never gave back anything.
I beg to disagree on this one. I know that Begin, who I related to, wanted to refuse the money, but Ben Gurion took the reparations.
That's interesting. I was unaware of it. All I can say is when I asked Yad Vashem about Nazi loot and things like that, we got some real quick answers like, never heard of it, never heard of anything like that.
That was public.
Right. Ephraim Zuroff, the great last remaining Nazi hunter, knows nothing about any of this, so he claims.
What was his name?
Zuroff. He's the disciple of Simon Wiesenthal.
Oh. Yeah, that was.
They've never heard of any of this loot. It's like they go around with their Nazi show, and but when you talk to them about, do you know anything about the Vatican? Oh, no, we don't know anything about that. Never heard of it.
Well, when I was a itty-bitty little boy, they were debating an ethical issue. Why should we take their money for our lives? It's blood money and stuff like that. But, again, that was a cover-up, obviously. Menachem Begin didn't want to buy into the cover-up. He wanted justice. He didn't get it. I'm rambling now. Let's go to more, less rambling. Who was Draganovich?
Well, that Draganovich, Father Draganovich, was had the position of the papal emissary to the country of Croatia. And he was the man in charge of the rat lines, and he ran it. He ran the rat lines. He had some helpers, and the Croatians were very good at that. So they ran it out of a place, I've been there, called the Croatian College of St. Jerome on Via Tomacelli, on the other side of the Tiber River from the Vatican. You can go there, walk around today, it's still there. And they ran it out of there in Rome, and then they moved their operation to Chicago later on. But they moved a lot of Nazis out of Europe.
Well, I understand that they were housed in Benedictine and not Jesuit, Dominic.
Franciscan. The Franciscans were the big ones.
There we go.
The Franciscan monasteries were at the disposal of the rat lines. That's how they moved a lot of these people around. They even dressed them up as priests.
Gave them new identities. Gave them ID cards.
Exactly. And they moved them to Argentina and Paraguay and Syria and Egypt and wherever else they could place them.
all of this was known to Israel. I got my own issues with that. All right.
But the fact was, there was a lot of gold came down from these places because after the Second War, the Russians were closing in, and what do you do with all your loot? Where are you going to put it? I mean, Switzerland was kind of closed off, so how could you get your loot? So you send it to the Vatican Bank and say it's a donation to the church. Wink, wink. Right? Shows up in Switzerland later, less 10%.
That one saw a whole convoy of trucks filled with jewels pull into Vatican Square under the Allies' eyes, and this is his testimony.
That's right. William Gowan testified to that in federal court. We still didn't get anywhere. A 10-truck convoy come down from northern Germany in 1946, packed with treasure, pulled into St. Peter's. Have you been there? In St. Peter's, right there where right where the Vatican pulled up there and unloaded. That happened, historical fact. Gowan investigated. He debriefed the people involved. Nonetheless, the U.S. courts found immunity for the Vatican. Didn't want to get into that one.
I'm going to say it again. I'm not American. I am Israeli. And Israel just let them get away with all the murder. And
well, they did. I've never had any help on these cases that I've worked on with the Holocaust from any Israeli groups. And in fact, the World Jewish Congress has been not just helpful, they've been unhelpful. There's a concerted effort to try to keep the lid on this stuff about the vast amounts of loot that was, taken away. And, they talk about their reparations and restitutions and this and that, but the real money has never been accounted for.
The real murders have never been accounted for. All right, I'm going into my stupor of reality. Who is Pavlik?
Well, Pavlik was the dictator who was in charge of Croatia. He ran concentration camps. Croatia was interesting because I see you've done some work on, this. It was run by Jews who had converted to Catholicism. Right, the Croatian elite were Jews. They were all married to people who would have been ethnic Jews under the Nuremberg laws. So Pavlich's wife was ethnically Jewish. His children were ethnically Jewish. His Minister of Interior children would have been ethnically Jewish. His field marshal, who was in charge of his army, his family would have been ethnically Jewish. And that's because the Croatian nationalist movement...
Out of this?
What's that? We're what they call Frankists.
Out of...
What?
Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm here. What were you saying?
Oh, again, same question. You know how you kind of, jab someone in their ribs. He's a Jew. We're kind of proud of it.
But you see, this is the thing. We call them Jews. They're not really Jews. They're people who had apostatized Judaism several generations back, and but it becomes a tricky issue for the Jewish organizations to deal with when you have fascists who have a Jewish background.
Growing up, I remember Franco. We got the jab in the ribs. He's really a Jew.
Well, they say about Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern-day Turkey.
Yes, they did.
And then some of this, certainly in the case of Croatia, was true. Because one of my clients, whose family had been partially liquidated by Pavlich, was saying, well, Pavlich was my sister's brother-in-law. I said, well, how's that? Through my wife, through her family. So, and of course, the 5% of wealthiest Jews in Croatia survived the war. They were made honorary Aryans. So, Croatia is a very ticklish issue, and of course, it was the focal point of laundering money as well. Yeah.
We've got enough ticklish. Listen, in our 2 hours, and I hope my listeners soaked it in. nothing is the way we were told. And by the way, that's no impunity on you, but I disagree with your approach. You're going to lose.
Well, but I'm in favor of nonviolence. I can't tell people to, uprise and get in the streets and throw the Muslims out and shoot them. I can't do that. So we have to go through international law to do it.
Look, don't get me wrong. We're on the same losing side. I've been right for 35 years, 40 years. Been absolutely right. And the other side doesn't want to be exposed. And they have a lot more power than you do.
They are, and they're ruthless. That's the problem. But again, you got to speak up for truth and justice, or you're unclean, Barry, and you're doing a good job.
By the way, thank you. Hearing that every now and then, thank you. It's good coming from you. But what I've been looking at, you've taken on. Look, they went to war, and I recall this. I'm not sure. Okay. You realize the danger here of sending a nation on the path to war, and if not war, disease. I mean, Africa.
It is, but again, a Muslim president with 50 million Christians under him, we know what's going to happen there. With a Muslim, with ISIS in the country, we know. So I certainly hope they hold the referendum in Biafra and they get out from under that mess and they can have a strong Christian country there.
All right, listeners, I'm sure you agreed with that statement in a big way. Tell people how they can find you, Jonathan.
Well, again, a couple ways. Just Jonathan Levy. Look me up on the internet. oes.info, brimstoneandcompany.com, any of those methods. I'm always very accessible. If you have a question, just ask.
All right, for an alternate view of history, I like this phone as much as Skype. Okay, Dr. Daisy Stern is on next week, I believe. All right, thank you, Jonathan, and don't forget, tell your friends and clients we're archived at www.libertyarchives.com. Great show once again, and that means I'm leaving depressed, but it was still a great show. Thanks.